Thanks for taking this class. This is an introduction to dowsing, but more importantly, we're going to go into what dowsing is, the earliest practices, what you can douse for, how to make dowsing rods, cultural and religious attitudes towards dowsing, and what can be used to douse, among other topics. My name is Benjamin Abbott. I'm a lifelong dowser from West Tennessee. I graduated from college at Middle Tennessee State University. I have a Bachelor of Science with my major was psychology, my minor was philosophy, and I got my master's degree at the University of Arkansas. And again, I really appreciate the fact that you're taking this class because I want to clarify some things about what dowsing is and what it's not, why it's so misunderstood, and importantly, that anyone can do it. One of the things that has prompted many people to not view dowsing in a positive light is just a misunderstanding of what dowsing is. Some people, and a lot of these people are people who benefit from making it out to be something that it's not. Try to make dowsing something like clairvoyance or ESP or telekinesis, which only a few people can do, if any. Dowsing is not that. It's a normal human activity that anyone can do and that all people have the ability to do. People have asked me whether apes would have the ability to do it. My answer would be I don't know. That said, in this class, you will absolutely learn how to dowse. For those of us who dowse, it is an involuntary act. We're not moving the pendulum, we're not moving the twig, we're not using the dowsing rods. I've watched people sit and stare at dowsing rods, waiting for them to work. If you do that, they're not going to work. For me, dowsing rods are always the easiest way to dowse, but a lot of people find that pendulums work better. It doesn't work if you are consciously thinking about it. They're not going to move. It's not a special power. It's not magic. I have never had any trouble dowsing, and that's because the first time I ever picked up dowsing rods, I was just a small child, and I knew they were going to work because I'd seen my granddaddy do it. Given the fact that I'm from a very agrarian culture, dowsing has always been part of the practices of farmers and anyone involved with agriculture in the Deep South. Dowsing is a normal human activity, goes into its history. I've seen people write that dowsing originated in cave culture, that it originated with the ancient Greeks, that it originated with the cradles of civilization. All that is probably true. All those people did dowse, but dowsing is kind of hard to pinpoint in terms of when it started. My personal belief is that given that dowsing is a normal human ability, it is as old as human beings are. Anecdotally, my belief is somewhat supported by how pendulums have been used literally since recorded history. In the old world cradles of civilization, China, Mesopotamia, the Indus Valley region, Egypt, and Sumeria, the use of pendulums is documented. The history of dowsing gets kind of fuzzy for several reasons. The first is dowsing is seen by most dowsers as a natural human ability. That's my contention and always has been. It is not something that dowsers have really thought about in terms of it needing a history. But something really problematic that comes up when we're talking about the history of dowsing is that it's written by two camps of people. The first are dowsers like me who love to dowse, and human nature being what it is among us, there are basically two camps among us. The first of which are like me, who sees enumerating Dowsing's history as a fruitless endeavor, given that it's as old as human beings itself. And the second camp tends to look for a history of dowsing that's not necessarily there. On the other hand, you have dowsers who want to find dowsing anywhere they think it might be. And you have another problem, that is, people want to vilify dowsing. And to do this, they cite the Bible. And this is not any judgment for or against anything in the Bible. It's just talking about how confusing and misunderstood dowsing is. In the Bible, you have a lot of verses which talk about divination and that it's tied with the pagan gods that surrounded Israel. And the problem with that is it assumes that dowsers are opening up spiritual portals to talk to spirits, when very few, if any, dowsers believe that dowsing comes from any place other than a normal human ability. I have asked dowsing rods spiritual questions in a yes or no format, but never once have I called upon God, gods, spirits, or any other entity other than myself to do the practice. But regarding how long dowsing has been practiced, there are murals in caves dating back to 6,000 BC or before the Common Era, if that's what you want to call it, in the French Tassel Caverns, showing what's clearly a person dowsing with a twig. And this is before recorded history. This history was just recorded on a cave in France. And what's really interesting about this is the first European mention of dowsing for water does not appear in the literature until the 1500s in Germany, when it's clear from the historical record that Germans dowsed for other things long before this time period. What's interesting about the cave murals is that there's artwork in caves that depict people dowsing for water, but in terms of written history, dowsing does not appear in the historical record, and this is really important, until 1518 with Martin Luther. And we'll talk about this a little more later, but Martin Luther is condemning the practice. That's the first time anyone ever speaks negatively of dowsing, and the first time it's even mentioned, because dowsing was such a built-in part of people's culture that there really wasn't a lot of need to write it down. The first dowsing rods, as I noted, are alluded to in the West in 1518. He was, like I said, he was the first person to ever talk specifically about their use. Martin Luther wrote that the use of dowsing rods was a violation of the first commandment. We will talk later about cultural and religious attitudes towards dowsing, but while this is not related to dowsing, it does relate to the use of pendulums in science. The ancient Chinese, in about the year 130, started using pendulums to predict earthquakes. And although to us science and divination are entirely two disciplines, one is considered a hard science, the other one is considered part of the occult. But to the ancients, there was absolutely no distinction between different subjects. Astrology and astronomy were at one time considered to be one subject. And we can see this because the horoscope and the zodiac, all of that is based around the position of the stars, which, even though astrology uses it for one purpose and astronomy uses it for another purpose, at one time these are clearly one subject. And as far as other hard sciences go, like chemistry, it began as an occult practice called alchemy. Alchemists were people who, in the Middle Ages, tried to convert things like wood into gold and to do other things that are not known to modern science to work. But in the process of trying to convert wood to gold, alchemists learned the basic elements. They learned what worked and what didn't. So chemistry, to the chagrin of modern scientists, came to us absolutely 100% from what's considered an occult practice now. All of the cradles of civilization utilized pendulums for divination. Generally, this was just a crystal and a piece of string or rope, and this is a method that still stays with us to this day. But given what we know for sure about pendulums and dowsing, it's safe to say that the use of a twig or leaves to douse, which is still done in modern times and in every place that you can think of, it's safe to say that that would be the oldest method. And this is supported by the record, as I noted earlier, that cave paintings back to 6000 AD, 6000 BC confirm that.